So I first met Ruckel about 25 years ago when I came here to take a class with Rabbi Kaplan. And after the second class, she already had invited me over for Shabbos lunch. And that turned into pretty much every Shabbos lunch and every holiday and Seder. And she was planning the mikveh, and she was so enthusiastic about it. Like no detail would go, you know, untold. I mean, from the tile to the floor to the this, that, everything. So she was so enthusiastic, and she talked. I'm not going to say she talked me into donating the middle window, but I volunteered to do that. And she just really introduced me to mikvah because I had not experienced that before. So then when my daughter was getting married, of course, I brought her here for the mikvah. A little while later, fortunately, she found out she was pregnant, and everything seemed fine. And then she found out that her baby had a very serious congenital heart condition, that the child was not expected to live. And Rocco says, well, she needs to come back to the mikveh. And I was a little skeptical, but she did. My daughter Shana came back here. Rena Miriam was born. She was expected to live 3 days. She, Baruch Hashem, is about to turn 12 years old and will soon have a bas mitzvah. Ruckel's idea of the mikveh is open to everyone. She planned it so it would be for brides, it would be for experienced mikveh goers, it would be for people who had no knowledge at all. And Ruckel was just larger than life. She did everything with enthusiasm, and she just brought so many different people together. I miss her so much. She was a gem to the entire community, and she's living on in everybody's hearts.
I met Rebbetzin Kaplan when I was a Kala about 15 years ago. I was drawn to her positivity and creativity. With every encounter, she always had a unique spin on what she was doing. She infused passion with creativity with the projects for Shul. I started taking her weekly classes for JLI. I remember one time she wanted to do something different, so she infused yoga with learning. So somehow we incorporated the whole mind, body, soul into the weekly learning. As we did yoga poses. It was very creative. Another time she did a banquet with a robotics team that was very interesting. I remember another time she wanted it to be more of an immersive experience, so she did sort of like a passport where you're like traveling to your soul state. She just had so many ideas that she wanted to share with the world, and share just Jewish knowledge with anyone she encountered. And it was a breath of fresh air to have someone meet you with no judgment, no preconception. She just wanted to shine her light into your life, and that would illuminate not just my soul, but everyone in the class. And it was truly inspiring. She really was an amazing role model. The last memory I do have was this past summer when she was not well, but she wanted to do a woman's trip to the Ohel one last time. And she was asking me if I could drive, since I don't mind driving long distances. So as soon as I said yes, she was set. She didn't say much to her family because she knew they would say, "You're crazy, why are you doing this long trip?" We went to the Ohel and back in one day. So it was definitely a long trip for her. And she didn't want to hear no. She didn't want to hear what, people's concerns. She knew that she wanted to be there, and she was weak, but you could tell she just had so much love and passion for what she was doing that it was really the energy that kept her going through the day. But it was a difficult day because I could see how weak she was. She got the group together, she planned the day down to the minute. Every minute was infused with something different and creative. We didn't just go to the OHEL, we did all this other stuff. And it was such a memorable trip to know that was her guiding force. That was the light she, that kept her moving, but that was also the light that she wanted to bless upon us as her students. And part of the trip, she booked the Rebbe's private study. So we were able to go into his private study and daven mincha as a group. And it was just so special and so memorable and so her. There was a time where she definitely needed a rest, and she said, okay, everyone gets, an hour to walk up and down the avenue and do their own shopping. She never would want to create pity. She never spoke that she was battling anything. She just said, you guys need a chance to go shopping and do your own thing. She didn't even mention that she needed to take a break, which takes strength to not share what you're going through in regards to the other people, because you want the other people to experience the day without sadness and without pity. And that takes such an amazing woman. She truly was a role model with true bitachon, and I strive to bring that level of bitachon to my life.
Rebbetzin Kaplan was a woman on a mission, on a holy mission. Everything in her life, the people in her life, the things in her life, her world was approached with full vigor and full power. She was going to get it done. I remember throughout the years, I was fortunate to learn with her, and always in her classes, it wasn't just reading out of the book. It wasn't just her preparing. It was her Rebbetzin Kaplan-esque sprinklings throughout the Torah that she taught. She would always add another element, a poem that went along with it. Her words always really captured the Rebbe's Torah and the message that she was trying to give in each of her classes. She also just approached all things this way. I remember once going to a Hanukkah party that she hosted. First of all, it was decorated, she went big. It was beautiful. She had these homemade latkes out on the counter, beautiful, from scratch. And I remember before digging in, she gave this beautiful Dvar Torah about the latke, and this seemingly, superficial thing was elevated to this holiness and this transcendent place. She also every interaction with her was powerful. It was meaningful. There was intent behind the words she chose, the way she chose to say them. She left you feeling challenged. She left you feeling empowered. And she was so real in her way, like in her compliments. They were always, I remember once my husband spoke at our daughter's Kiddush, and right when he was done speaking, she turned to me, she goes, he's such a good speaker, he's such a good speaker. It made me feel so proud of my family, of my husband. She just really, she left you feeling like you mattered, like she saw you, and she wanted to value you and express that value. She also would send these thank you notes for different things events we attended or donations we made, and there was always something extra to go along with the thank you note. Once she sent this beautiful box with a ribbon tied around it with this homemade manzel bread. It was delicious, and I remember thanking her and raving about how delicious it was to her, and that at the next event, here's the manzel bread on the table. And I said, whoa, this is the manzel bread. And she just turned to me with this smile of like, I'm so glad that you're happy to see that. And it was something so seemingly so simple, but so heartfelt and so intentional. She really did everything with meaning, with thought, and with depth. And that's how she lived her life. She elevated everything and everyone around her. And I'm just so happy I got to know her over the years.
Hello, my name is Chen Goodman. My father, Carl, and Chava were probably of the first customers at Chabad of Baltimore when Rabbi Kaplan and Rebbetzin Rachel opened up Chabad here in the 70s. I wanted to share a very cute story with everybody. It happened maybe about 10 years ago, where we have a beautiful yeshiva here in Baltimore, and it goes from the ages of maybe 15 to I think 17. And every year for Hanukkah, they like to do miftzayim, and they like to hand out menorahs, they like to hand out candles. And we have different ways of doing it. Today, we have a car parade, boys hanging around the corner, finding out, if you need a menorah, and they give the menorah to you. It's a beautiful lesson the Rebbe taught to care about every Jew. This one time, about 10 years ago, the boys wanted to do something big, and they wanted to rent RVs, as we call them here, mitzvah tanks. And so they're 15 years old. They can't rent anything. They certainly can't rent RVs. And so they look to the community members, and we'll raise the money. And if you could just put down your license and give us a day or two of your time and drive us around, they'll be able to do the Hanukkah Miftzayim in a grand manner. And so they asked me to do it, and I happily signed up. And for a few days, I was taking the boys around in the RV, in the mitzvah tank, and we had a wonderful time. It really, really was special to see mitzvah tanks here in Baltimore. The last day of Hanukkah, I get a call out of the blue from Rachel Kaplan. She says, "Chen, I understand you have a mitzvah tank." I said, yes, I do. She goes, "Great, we're going to Mitzvah. Come pick me up." And it just took a minute. I'm like, what is happening? Rachel Kaplan wants me to come pick her up. No problem. That's what we're going to do. Before I know it, I pull the big mitzvah tank up onto Deancroft Road. Rachel Kaplan gets in, just me and her. She had ideas of where she wanted to go. And I said, "Where are we going to?" "Just follow me. I'll tell you where to go." She gave me directions. Make a right, make a left. We're going to this house. We're going to this house. We had the music pumping. We had all the Hanukkah messages going around. It was really special. She went from house to house, specific people she wanted to see. It was a lot of fun. And then we ended up right outside of Green Spring Shopping Center. And this was just amazing. So I'm sitting there in the tank. She goes, "Wait here. I'm going to go bring people, and you're going to put tefillin on them." So this whole time, I can't believe what was happening. She steps outside the tank, and I hear her outside. I hear her say, "The first guy who walked by." First guy walks by, she goes, "Are you Jewish?" He said, "Yeah." She said, "Did you put on tefillin?" She said, "No." He said, "No." And she goes, "What's your problem? Get in the tank. Get in the tank. We're putting on tefillin." And she just, one after the next after the next. I've been on Mitzvayim for many years, and I can tell you, when you want to get a stranger to put tefillin on, there's a couple steps in the process. You have to build trust. You have to let their guard down. You have to kind of give them an example of what it is and why you might want to do it. And then and only then you have a 2% chance of maybe somebody doing it. But she was such a powerhouse. She was such a special energy out there. She was able to skip 5 steps and get straight to it. Everybody who she asked to put on tefillin came right in the tank. I was just setting up a fishing net, and she just brought them in. It was the most wild experience I've ever seen in my life. Generally speaking, women, when the women do Mitzvayim, they're usually handing out Shabbos candles, and men are usually typically doing, tefillin. And so when I got the call from Rebbetzin Kaplan and said, "We're going on Mitzvayim," I thought I was getting ready to hand out some Shabbos candles. But no, she was ready to do the real deal. I thought it was very unique for Rebbetzin Rachel to start asking men to put on tefillin. And when you saw it in action, there was no saying no to her. When Hashem asked Moshe Rabbeinu to redeem Bnei Yisrael, his first response was, "Mi ani, who am I? I have a lisp. I can't do it. Nobody's going to listen to me." And only when it came to V'yichad af Hashem b'Moshe, when Hashem put his passion into Moshe, he made him a shliach. And when he became a shliach of the Rebbeinu Shalom, he didn't care about his lisp. He didn't care about anything. And we find this quality also with Rebbetzin Rachel, who's the OG shliach here in Baltimore, when it came to the miftayim, when it came to crossing over the boundaries, I'm going to do tefillin or I'm going to do neshek, it didn't make a difference because she was a shlucha. She was a complete messenger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all the obstacles, whether a mitzvah tank fits at Green Spring Shopping Center or not, whether I'm asking men to put tefillin on or not, none of that mattered. That is the takeaway for us. That is a takeaway for the family, that here we are, where the entire world seems to be against Bnei Yisrael, against Yiddishkeit. The answer isn't less Yiddishkeit and hiding your Magen David. The answer is taking a mitzvah tank, throwing on the loudspeakers, and going out and being a proud Jew. That's the lesson. That's a takeaway. Do not be afraid. The opposite. You should be screaming Yiddishkeit from the rooftops until Mashiach comes. Just wanted to share this amazing, beautiful story with this amazing, beautiful family that means so much to the Goodman family. And we just hope that Hashem gives the mishpacha the nechama that they need.
Hello, my name is Kenny Vogelstein. I am a lawyer in Pikesville, Maryland. I'm very sorry to have to be here today, but I do want to share a few thoughts about Rachel. I met her about 25 years ago when I sent some of my kids to the camp right here where I'm sitting at Gan Israel. And I remember vividly that we didn't know any of the kids in the camp. We lived off Old Forest Road, and back at that time, there were very few of the kids that went here that were in that neighborhood. Most of them were much closer. But I do remember how warm Rachel was to us and really made my kids feel at home. And that meant a lot to me. And I think that's one of the things I think about Rachel, is she was really selfless and tried to do the best for everyone. So I had a child who had some disabilities, and I think at that time Rachel's kids were some of the counselors, and they just went out of their way to make him feel like any other kid. In fact, after the camp ended, Yaakov would come to the house and learn with Tobias once a week or every other week, and they both, I think, really got a lot out of it. He was pretty much the same age as Tobias, but he came over and they were like friendly and learned, and it was a great experience. So that's how we first came to know Rachel and her and her family. Later, seems like every holiday she'd stop over and bring us some goodies for Purim or Hanukkah or Pesach, Shmura Matzah, and she just really stayed in touch with us, and we developed a really good feelings towards her. When I think of her, I think of just a giving person who didn't care about herself at all. She just was devoted to her family and the Jewish people, and there was a spark about her when I was thinking to myself the other day, what is it about Rachel that it's just, she really was different than any other person that I knew. She felt closer to God. It seemed like she had a special relationship, and it's just tragic that she was taken so early. Similar, my son passed away just a few months ago, and I think of the good people seem to be taken early for some reason. Eventually, I'm a lawyer, and Rachel asked for my advice. She really wanted to build this kosher cafe, a Chabad cafe for learning and eating, and she had just so many ideas as to what the menu should be and where it should be located. At one time, we were looking at a church on Reisterstown Road next to Market Maven, and that went on for about a year. We were really trying to get that building. A friend of hers got another church, I think it was in New Jersey, the church just felt really close to her too. They seemed to really bond together, and I'm not sure the reason it just didn't work out, but many years after, she was always looking at a good location. She even had architectural plans, and I'm sure if she were not cut short, that building would have come to fruition. But she's a remarkable woman. I really will miss her a lot.
I do not remember when I met Rachel, but I do remember very vividly some conversations that I had with her early on in our relationship. I probably met her in the same way that my husband met her, which was through dropping off our children at Camp Gan, Israel, in the shul building on Old Pimlico Road. Our kids had trouble separating for school, for camp. They'd literally run home crying, no matter if it was a mile or 3 miles. But when we were able to drop them off at Gan Israel, there was no looking back. The counselors were just very hands-on and fun and caring, playful. Rachel was overseeing the whole thing, and she, as my husband would say, really embraced all of our children. And even though they came from a different neighborhood than the vast majority of the children, they were welcomed. And one of our children had lost most of his vision and hearing from a brain tumor, and had trouble joining a lot of activities he loved to. And Rachel made sure that the counselors, who really didn't need much coaching anyway, did the right type of games that he could be a full participant in. Another memory was running into Rachel in the aisle at 7 Mile Market on a regular basis. Almost every time I went there, somehow we'd see each other. What I found from those conversations was that even with every responsibility that she had in the community, many of them that she brought on herself because of her vast creativity, she didn't want to leave any task undone that came to her head, but that she was also such a hands-on mother. In these conversations in 7 Mile Market, that somebody who really had a very different background than I did in her life. I came from a non-observant Jewish household. I was well educated Jewishly, but I didn't keep all the mitzvot that she did so well and also tried to spread with joy. And I'll use the word again, and magnificence. Everything looked so inviting, the way that she practiced her Judaism. At a certain point, she called me, probably about 4 years ago, and asked me if I would edit a book of poetry that she was putting together. And at the time, I remember telling her that I was tied up with editing a few other books and of other people's and other family commitments, but I would take it on because I really couldn't wait to read what she had written. And I found myself really transfixed by her self-expression. And she would tell me that she'd jump out of bed in the middle of the night to put down her thoughts that they came out of her head poetically. She was determined to write this book of poetry, get it published, but she wanted to do it with excellence. And I had done the editing. I have no idea how she knew that I was a writer or editor, but I edited her book, found all the wisdom that she had. She was so insightful, and shared her absolute joy of Judaism and being Jewish, and finding Jewishness in every little trivial detail of life and death. Everything was a whole. And actually, I think, and this is what comforts me at this time, I think that she saw life and death as a continuum. The acts that she performed on this earth, she really saw as a stepping stone to an even happier place, if possible. And believe me, she will be, she has been very well greeted in the next life. I don't think I could say it better myself. I said it myself in her first book of poetry. I ended up editing her second book of poetry as well. But this is God in the Details, which is her first book of poetry, and she gave me the opportunity to be her editor and be so much a part of her life. It enabled us to have even more conversations than we would have, so I'm forever grateful for that. Bringing spirituality into physicality, which is, I'm intercepting my own line to say that she would say that on a regular basis. that her goal was to bring spirituality into physicality, to make it real, to make spirituality live and breathe in our veins. And we should be an example unto ourselves and unto the people around us, just through our sense of taking in everything around us and giving out to our maximum ability. Bringing spirituality into physicality is the way Rebbetzin Rachel Kaplan describes her highest calling, by which she serves God and humanity. Through her poetry, she proves that self-expression personalizes and enriches her own spirituality. It also allows her to inspire others to marvel at the hand of Hashem in our world. To know Rachel is to love her. Every one of her special touches in her outreach, including her spirited cooking and baking, sophisticated messages of wisdom, and abundance of poetic expression in this book, indicates her example of kindness and electric devotion to sharing her deep insights with every Jew and every human being. This book not only immerses us in Rachel's world views, but awes the reader with her ability to put into words her nuanced observations others might take for granted. Through these poetic connections, this extraordinary Rebbetzin and proud and dedicated mother and grandmother of a multitude moves us closer to the will of God, to appreciate and seek to preserve and increase the goodness around us, Tikkun Olam. I wish my incredibly charismatic and driven friend much continued success, Hatzlacha, in her commitment to motivate Jews to engage in prayer, tefillah, education, chanuch, good deeds, mitzvot, and charity, tzedakah. Her tireless and impassioned creativity, revealed in this collection of original poetry, is a showcase of her touching gifts of insight and communication, and will serve as yet another vehicle to help her relate to and relay momentous messages to her fellow Jews as she works to establish an edifice for the purpose of adult Jewish education, Aleph Learning Institute. Rachel was a golden individual inside and out. She truly will be missed. But her writings, her teachings, her neshama will live on in everybody she touched, and God willing, touched through being touched by the things that she produced, the things and the legacy that she produced.
I don't remember exactly how old I was, but my parents sent me after school. I would come home from TI. I don't remember what grade, but I think I probably was in middle school, maybe 6th grade. And I would go after supper to Mr. Rabbi Bamberger's home on Glenwood Court, and we would review the things that we learned. We would go over, the last week or whatever it was. I went once a week, and he would tutor a lot of students after school, just to help them in their Gemara and their learning, whatever it was. A very sweet man. And our families didn't know each other. I don't know exactly how we got in touch with them. In any case, after my mother passed away, Mrs. Bamberger, Rabbi Bamberger's wife, came to the Shiva, and we didn't really know her at all. My mother didn't know her. I saw her briefly sometimes when I came over to their house to learn. And she came and she shared a really beautiful story and a sentiment and a lesson. And she said that she felt compelled to come to the Shiva because she wanted to share that over the many years that her husband tutored students, I don't know if it was hundreds, if it was thousands, I don't know what the number is. In those years that he did it, my mother was, I believe, the only person to ever come at the end of the period that we learned together. I don't know if it was for several months or for a year or whatever it was. One of the only people, or the only person, that at the end of that period of studying together, she brought over 2 letters. One letter was from my parents, just saying thank you so much. It means more than words can say, what you've done helping my son. And Mrs. Bamberger shared a second card, which has my handwriting, which again just says, "Dear Rabbi Bamberger, thank you so much. I'll never forget the difference you made in my life," signed by me. And she said, I kept these letters. Now they're probably more than 20, 25 years that she's held on to these. Her husband passed away a year and a half ago. And she kept these letters in order to share a lesson with her children and her grandchildren in what it means to show Hakaras Hatov. So many people came to study and to learn with her husband. And yet, while it wasn't something which he expected and wasn't perhaps necessary, my mother felt that it was important. He did something for us. We need to show proper appreciation. And she didn't only insist on sending a card herself, but she wanted to teach me that lesson. She wanted me to understand the importance and the value of showing Hakaras Hatov, of showing appreciation. And so she made sure that I also wrote a card, because I was the one that learned with him. And throughout my life, as I think back on it, every single time my mother asked me to help her with something, or I can think of others who have helped my mother with things, she always made a point and an emphasis on finding a unique or special way to show Hakaras Hatov, to show appreciation. And she taught us that lesson about how important it is when someone does something for you, you demonstrate appreciation back, even if it's just a card. And I think Mrs. Bamberger showed how powerful and impactful, even just a little card saying thank you, how powerful that can be. She held on to them for 25 years.